What's going on YouTube? This is yours truly, Dre the Plug, reporting live with some more technical heat. Make sure y'all hit that subscribe button below. Make sure y'all hit that bell below so y'all can stay notified every single time I drop new technical heat. But let's get into it, man. Let's jump right back into these interviews. I just finished a whole bunch of sponsorship product videos, so definitely go check all of those out. Some of them I never even seen in person, so I thought it was really dope. And then on top of that, also did a couple of electronic projects, so definitely go check out those previous videos I did. But now I'm about to jump right back into my interview videos where I interview different people all across the country. Let's get into it. Roll the clip.
Hey, I'm Eric. I am a software engineer out of New York City. I work at Google NYC. I do mostly full stack engineering. And I didn't go to school. I'm a self-taught software engineer, but I learned a lot of my engineering and like data structure and algorithms from MIT OpenCourseWare. So I always try to give them a shout out. But yeah, and I'm based out of New York City. In Jersey now. I need to start getting comfortable saying Jersey because I recently moved, but I'm from New York.
All right, Eric, so what made you take on the route of being a full stack developer?
So because I am a little old, there wasn't like mobile development wasn't a thing yet, unless you wanted to like do it on like Java, like BlackBerry or something like that. So I got into web development first. And then as I got into web development, I really just I used to do networking. So I always kind of like try to stay as close to like the middle as possible. So I always got into like just doing server side and client side. And I like moving between the whole stack. And I really enjoy that. So yeah, that's why I do full stack.
All right, Eric, so what do you feel is the biggest benefit when it comes down to being a full stack developer or even just being in this field?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. For me, it's actually freedom. And I think our field lets us really like kind of plan out your day however you want. Sometimes I work really early, sometimes I work late. And I like being able to do that. Like if I worked at a bank, I gotta like be there and like do support and stuff like that. And that's tough, right? So like I learned that over the years that like the amount of freedom we get, it's priceless compared to other jobs. So I really like that. That's one thing I really like about tech. Another thing is autonomy. For a long time, I've always kind of like just decided on what I wanted to work on. And that's tough, right? It's like autonomy across organizations could be hard. But being able to say, like, I want to work on this, like, and I want to work on that. And that's also why I like full stack. Like sometimes I like doing backend, but after like 3 or 4 months of that, I get tired. I was like, oh man, I want to go do more client side stuff, more front end stuff. Especially when like new technology is coming out, I like being able to switch. So when Go was coming out, I switched to doing a lot more server side work. And then now I'm like with React and like Angular and TypeScript mostly, I want to do more client side and really pick up. So I've been able to kind of like just stay with the trends by doing full stack and like switching back and forth. And I really like that because we all kind of get bored, right? No one wants to do the same thing over and over. And doing full stack lets me switch back and forth. I like it. I think it's fun. I like to think like if I'm doing full stack on my day job, if I'm doing backend on my day job, I try to do like client side open source work or like vice versa. If I'm doing like open source work backend, I'll try to do like client side front end. I don't do that much open source work anymore, but when I used to, that's kind of like how I thought about it. So I try to stay on both lanes. Yeah, I just find it fun. Yeah. And then another benefit I would say is it's silly not to mention the money, right? Because it's such a high paying career that it's not so much about getting paid well. It's actually the opportunity that the money kind of like affords you, right? So like not having to worry about like grocery, not having to worry about those things. I think they're super important. And when I first was looking at, I didn't pick a career, right? It's something you would do if you were like a student. You'd be like, oh, what career I should pick at? I was already doing IT, but I was looking at how can I, make more money with my time? And what I realized is probably like just doing a different role that paid more. And at the time that was engineering. And it worked out well because the industry has kind of like boomed, right? But yeah, I think that's important. I think sometimes people kind of just try not to mention the money, but I think it's a big deal, and I think it's good to be open about that stuff.
Okay, so what's your favorite coding language, and what do you feel like is the best coding language for beginners?
My favorite language right now is probably TypeScript. I'm just like enjoying working with it. But I do think the best language for someone to just start with is probably JavaScript. I hear a lot of Python, or I would never say Java or anything like that. But JavaScript is super simple to like start with, and it's very forgiving. Like TypeScript, I wouldn't recommend it, right? Because it has the whole concept of type. And Python is also forgiving. But the one thing I always say between JavaScript and Python is that if you start learning JavaScript and you understand like the syntax and stuff like that, you're gonna be able to pick up a lot more language faster because it's more in line with like the C style language. So like JavaScript, Java, C, C sharp, C++, all those languages. And the list goes on, right? PHP, like they're super similar in their syntax, whereas like Python is completely different, right? So that's why I just always recommend people start with JavaScript. It'll be hard because you have to like learn all these like, curly braces and exclamation point and semicolon that you don't have to deal with in Python. But once you get past that hurdle, picking up other languages is going to be so much easier. And they're different, but they're just way more alike than they are different, especially when you're just starting off. Like those differences don't really matter. So yeah, definitely JavaScript. Start with JavaScript.
All right, Eric, so what's something that you did not expect jumping into being a full stack engineer, working for Google, and just taking a tech route in general? What's something that you did not expect?
One of the things is when I started off, I didn't have a degree, right? But I was young. I was like 18, 19. No one really expected me to have a degree. And I always thought I would go back to school. And that was difficult for me for various reasons. It doesn't matter. But I always kind of struggled to get back into it because of those other factors. And I didn't think I was going to be able to get this far without a degree. There's been some challenges here and there, but overall it's been, it hasn't really hindered my career as much. At least personally, I don't think so. There's definitely been things that have come up, but I've been able to kind of like work around them. And like, I would have never thought I'd be able to like work at a place like Google, right, without a college degree, which now it's definitely like a lot more common. Like when I was starting off, I was definitely I held that very close to my chest. I wouldn't like tell people. I wouldn't tell people at work. Obviously, like my managers and like, the bosses knew it. But I would never tell people that. I was always like, I was scared, right? It's like, oh man, like they're gonna find out I'm a fraud, right? And like people talk about imposter syndrome now a lot, but like a lot of these words just weren't there, right, 10 years ago. So it was hard to know like that feeling, right, of feeling like an imposter, especially when you yourself think you don't qualify, right? You don't, because you don't have a degree. So that was always very tough for me. But now that I'm more open about it, I'm really shocked how like people are super supportive about it. And like now it's a little bit more common that, it's like, it's not shocking for me to have worked with someone that didn't go to school neither. Like I know people that had different degree, right? Like one of my friends who's like super smart, has like a music degree, and someone has like a history degree. So that's been very comforting. And I don't know if when I started, I don't know if I would have ever been like, oh man, like, it's not that big of a deal. It was always something I was always scared about someone finding out. But yeah, people are just, I find people in tech to be like generally just nice and like supportive, and that's actually been super cool.
All right, Eric, so what is it like working for Google in New York?
I love that you mentioned New York because I do feel like all the offices have different vibes, and New York is the best one. It's like an inside joke. People say that New York is like the best Google office, but I generally think it is because it's like it has a very New York vibe, which is like I don't know how to explain the New York vibe. It's like gritty but nice. It's just like fun but gritty, but like the right kind of gritty, if that makes sense. I don't know. I won't get into the details, but it's just like, because it's also New York City. Like I think our cafes are some of the best. Like we just have like just amazing team of people working on that stuff. And the perks, I would say the perks are top notch compared to like all the other Google offices, but they all have kind of like a New York spin on it, which I really like. And in general, working for Google or any of the big tech companies, it's really nice because you get a lot of freedom. And like I always say freedom, and I don't think people fully understand what that means. It's like, if someone shows up to work at 11, like most people are going to be okay with it. Like no one's going to be like, oh my God, what's going on? Like what's happening, right? But you're still expected to get your work done. Like that day, you should probably like make up the time somehow. But that's really hard for like a lot of jobs to like be able to pull off. And when everything is so technical and like a lot of the stuff could just be done like remote, you do get a lot of freedom to like really design your day however you see fit. One of the things with Google, I would say, is that I've had a lot of autonomy in my career. I've been tech lead, I've managed teams, things like that. But even at Google, I do feel like it's one of the places where even as like an individual contributor, I've been able to like get so much more control of the things I work on and like the route I want to go with it, which is weird. Before, I would say it was harder to do unless you were in a leadership role. Whereas here, you're really encouraged to like just, be an owner and like really do what you think is right or whatever it is that you want to work on. So that's really cool. And then the best thing about NYC is that the people at Google NY, there are actually a decent amount of New Yorkers, which I think is why I like it. So it's like I'm in that group too. But it just has like a cool NYC vibe. I don't know how to explain it, but it's definitely the best Google office, hands down.
All right, Eric, so how did you get into your side hustle?
So my side hustle is kind of more like a side hobby. My side hustle is really just helping people break into tech on Instagram. My username or my IG is ericjduran. And one of the things was when I had been an engineer for a while now, maybe like 12 or 13 years. And I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do in my career, where I wanted to go. I stopped working for a little bit. I took like some time off and I was like, man, I've never worked at like Google. I always wanted to work at Google. And I started like researching what I needed to do to get a job. And it worked out, right? But in that process, I was like, man, I got to take a technical interview. And I've done technical interviews before, but now that the caliber of like a Google technical interview, right? And I was like, all right, I got to start studying data structure and algorithms. And I had learned it a long time ago when I was first like learning to program, but I forgot about it. And I never took a class. So like I learned it in the sense that like I just brushed up on the material. And I realized how hard it was to like really understand that. And I saw a lot of people like complaining about the technical interview. And in that process, I was like looking for resources and I saw people had Instagrams. And I was like, man, there's like a whole Instagram community for like tech. And I was like, oh man, I really want to get into that. So I started like just following people and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna create an account. Like, am I gonna do it? And it's so funny because I was like hesitant to create an Instagram account, which is not that big of a deal. But I created an Instagram account and I just started posting pictures and then I was talking and then I was posting videos and people started reaching out to like help with like, an interview because they saw I worked at Google. And it kind of just turned into a thing. And then I was like, I had already been mentoring people on the side, just personally, like friends and colleagues and stuff like that. And I just started doing that on IG. So I would like, people would reach out to me like, hey, I'm getting an interview with like Facebook next week. Like, what should I do? And I'll be like, 1 week is too fast, right? Like, let's start over. And I would like kind of walk them through the process and like what the material is and like how to learn data structure and algorithms. And I think for a lot of people, just knowing that I didn't go to school and I was able to learn the material really encouraged them to be like, all right, I can learn this too, because it's not impossible, but it's like, it takes time. And time is where people struggle, right? Like a lot of times people think you can learn it in like a day or two. And it's like, this is gonna like take weeks. And just having someone tell you that, it's kind of like reassuring. And it's like, all right, I'm doing the right thing. It's just gonna be a bit before it kind of like clicks. So I just started doing that. And then I kind of turned that into like my little side hustle where it's like, all right, just help people on Instagram. And it's fun. Like, right, I get to do these interviews. I meet new people.
All right, Eric, so what's some good interview tips when it comes down to taking on like a full-time, full-stack interview?
Interviewing in general is really hard. Like, it's something that people don't do all the time unless you're the interviewee or the interviewer, and that's not that difficult or not that stressful. One of the things I say is like when you're interviewing for any role, not just a full stack role, the trick is knowing how to answer the question when you don't know the answer, right? If you know the answer, cool, you don't need any advice, right? Just be thoughtful and like take your time and explain it. But when you don't know the answer, a lot of people struggle to say like, I don't know exactly how to solve this. But one thing you could do is say, I'm not sure how to solve this, but here's what I would do if I was in this situation. So you could say, I will Google, but not just Google, right? Be specific. So like, oh, I will go to MDN, or I will go and look up this documentation. And then after that, I will reach out to this group of people, or like this, I will go to this GitHub and like look at the issues for something I'm struggling with, or something like that. And like the more specific you are, that kind of like helps the other person really understands like how you would go about solving the problem. Because if you think about it, what you're trying to do is you're convincing the whoever's interviewing you that you're like a safe bet, right? You're trying to like get rid of any stress they have. Like if I hire this person, are they gonna be like solid, or am I gonna have to like worry about that? So you want to like kind of just get rid of any stress the interviewer might have. And the way to do that is really to like think through your process. And it's easy to do when you know the solution, but it's a lot harder when you don't fully understand how to solve the problem, or if it's something you haven't experienced before. And if you're doing like a full stack interview, the range is so big, right? It could be like, how will you solve like this, this issue someone was having on the website, and it turned out to be like a networking problem or something like that, or your connections were lagging, but the request was like midway, things like that. Or it could be like some super specific CSS thing. And the trick is like CSS is a good example. Like if someone asks you like a CSS question, you just don't know, because like you do full stack, but maybe you don't get that much into the CSS or the styling. You can be like, oh, I don't, I'm not really sure how to solve that, but I will go and I will read this spec, or I will go and like try like go on CSS tricks and like learn something. And that's perfectly fine. I think the worst thing you could do is like lie or like try to stumble through it. And it's hard because you're so nervous, right? But just being able to like having the courage to say, I don't know, but this is how I will solve it, goes a long way.
And that concludes this video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. It really do help my channel when it comes down to the YouTube algorithm. If you guys have any questions regarding anything, just hit me up on Instagram, hit me up on the gram at DreThePlug123. And then also go check out my other YouTube channel. This is actually my second channel. My first one was called Andre ClassicCuts. I basically go in and give tutorials about all types of different haircuts. I actually show people how to do different type of things with the clippers that has never been done, and I pretty much go into detail as to why certain things happen. So definitely go check out that channel. Besides that, be on the lookout for my next content that's dropping. Be on the lookout for it, because it's coming real soon. And I'm out.